how to integrate Cybersource into your website to process payments. So today specifically I'll be talking about the unified checkout flow of Cybersource payment gateway. So this is the hosted payment method of Cybersource. So you, from a high level, it's basically there is a server to server request for which you get a JWT token. You get a JWT token and you propagate it to the front end, and you load the JavaScript library with this token, and which renders the payment acceptance form, and then the customer inputs the card details into that, and then you process the payment. So the whole advantage is that you don't have to worry about the PCI DSS scope as a merchant, because the payment form is being rendered on the Cybersource servers. So that is the biggest advantage over here. And another step is you can even enroll for webhook notification so that you get the webhook of the payment response. So this is like a high level flow diagram. So the customer comes into your checkout page. The moment he or she clicks on checkout, we basically call your internal server API, which calls the Cybersource capture context API. We get the response, which is a JWT token. Then we propagate it to the merchant website. We load the JavaScript SDK using this JWT token. We initialize the accept object, initialize the unified payment object. We render the payment acceptance form. You can show the where you can control where you want to show this form. And once the customer does if the customer is enrolled for 3DS flow, he does the 3DS flow and he does a successful payment. Then we get that payment details over here in .complete, and then based on this we can redirect the customer to the success or failure page. Another recommendation is using the webhook. So this implementation is such that from your front end you will be polling your backend until you receive this webhook from Cybersource. So you get the Cybersource webhook onto your backend, and you will be polling for this, and only after that you will show the success screen. So that's actually recommended also. So just let me show you a demo of this. So this is my checkout page. I call the proceed to payment. So multiple things are actually happening over here. So here I'm actually calling my capture context, and the response of that is a JWT token. So this is internally calling the Cybersource capture context, and which gets this JWT token, and then I'm propagating that to my client, and in my client I'm rendering the payment acceptance form using this JWT token. So I have a test card over here, so I will use that. You can put any expiry month or year in the future. So here you go, 1 2 3 4, first name, and you can, and now you come to the final page and you can accept. So now it redirects me to the 3DS flow. So this is the bank OTP page in production. Here this is a simulation. So I'm just going to write 1 2 3 4, and my 3DS flow is done. As soon as the 3DS flow, you can see that the payment has been attempted and is successful. This is the transaction ID, payment method, approval code, and the amount. So let's break down what all is happening. So the first thing is the server side setup, right? So this is what I was telling you. The first thing that happens is you make a server to server call to the Cybersource server for the capture context API. So let me open the documentation over here. So this is the documentation of Cybersource. It's very well defined, and you can see that this is the API I was talking to you about, the capture context API of Cybersource, and this is the request payload. So using this request payload, we basically call the capture context API and we get a JWT token. So let me just go through this request payload. So you can see that this is the client version. So this is the Cybersource version that you're using of Unified Checkout. This is the target origin of the website where you'll be launching Unified Checkout from. Allowed payment methods, card networks are the card schemes you want to allow, Visa, MasterCard, Amex. If you have a local card payment method, you can use that. This is the allowed payment types, Apple Pay, Google Pay, Click to Pay, Pan Entry, country, locale, capture mandate. So this is where you can control what all you want to show in the payment acceptance of. Do you want to show the billing address, etc. And this is important, the complete mandate node. So this complete mandate node, it decides how the payment will be processed. Do you only want to do an authorization, a capture, or a prefer auth? So authorization means you put you're putting the funds of the customer on hold from the issuing bank. Capture means you are actually you authorize it and then you do a capture, which means that you are actually putting a hold, and as well as you're kickstarting the settlement cycle. So only when you capture a payment is when the settlement cycle begins from the issuing bank to the acquiring bank. Prefer an auth is basically where it will perform a capture when where an auth is not allowed by payment type, and if an authorization is allowed, it will do an authorization. And then consumer authentication is the 3DS flow. This is the risk of Cybersource. You want to enable it, and this is the data node. So you have the order details where you mention the currency, the total amount, and it even gives you a response. It even gives you console where you can fire a request. So let me just fire a request and show you this response. So as you can see, this is the thing I was talking to you about. This is a JWT token. Let me pull this token into JWT IO and show you the details. So this is the response we get from capture context, and you can see that it has the request payload. And one thing I want to show you is the library URL. So the library URL is actually dynamic, so it's not actually hard coded in the front end. So it comes from the response. So you can use this to render the script. And then you have the client library integrity. So this is the first thing. So I want to show you this in my code also. So this is my capture context API, for which I'm using Java Spring Boot. This internally creates the request payload, which I was just talking to you about. Client version, this is the latest version. This is my target origin, the card schemes, the billing address details, and then the complete mandate. So here I want to capture it. The decision manager is false, so consumer authentication is true to enable 3DS, and the total amount in currency is being passed on the front end. I'm setting that, and then I call the capture context API. The REST template.exchange calls it. This is the response which I get, the JWT token, which I'm propagating to my front end. So once I get that in my front end, what am I doing? So let me just show you that. This is my front end. So this is the capture context response I told you about, and then so here is where I'm actually submitting the checkout. So you can see I'm calling the API capture context, and then I get the response, which is JWT token. I am decrypting it, and I get the client library integrity, and I'm saving it in the store, and then I'm using that value to render the script. So as you can see over here, the script SRC is coming from this client library, which I just showed you. The client library integrity is script.integrity, and once the script finishes loading, we will invoke the initialize Cybersource. So this is where I'm creating the accept object, the unified payments object, and I'm showing where to embed this. So this is where the payment acceptance form will show up. So this is that, and once you initiate the payment response comes once the payment is successful after the 3DS flow and all. It comes in this complete response, which is a transient token, which is also a JWT token. It's transient. I think validity is 15 minutes, and based on this you can redirect to your success page based on the result over here. So I will just show you an example of the transient token. Yeah, so this is an example of the transient. Once the payment is successful, you will get the response like this: outcome, status, authorized, the payment details, the approval code, response code, more payment information. So based on this, you can do a redirect. This is one way. The second way is you can enroll for webhooks, and once the payment is done, Cybersource will push it into your server, and you keep polling your backend for that response. So that is also ideally what is recommended. So that is the way I would suggest doing the integration also. So just coming back, the client side setup is basically loading the JavaScript library, initializing the accept object, the payment unified payment object, showing the payment acceptance form, and processing the payment. So this is the end-to-end flow. Thank you guys.